5 boys would go missing in South Korea, and it would take 11 years to finally find them. But what happened to them is still a mystery. Hello, true crimerers. This is another true crime in a short amount of time, and it is the case of the Frog Boys. Viewer discretion is advised. I do want to apologize in advance. I am probably going to say some of the names in this case very wrong. So this story takes place in a village just outside of Daegu, which is in South Korea. 5 young boys who were very close friends. Their names were 13-year-old Yoo Chul-won, 12-year-old Jo Ho-yeon, 11-year-old Kim Yong-gyu, 10-year-old Park Chan-in, and 9-year-old Kim Jong-sik. The 5 boys were basically considered closer than brothers. They literally grew up together in the same little part of the neighborhood, and they would frequently play together. They would frequently explore together. And on March 26th, 1991, they were doing exactly that. March 26, 1991 was a very special day there in South Korea because they were holding a national election that day. It was the first election in about 30 years that was like a pro-democratic election. It was therefore a very important day, a very hectic day. A lot of people were kind of just sort of out of sorts. The 5 young boys, you know, while their parents were out there doing the adult things, they told all of their parents that they were going to go out and do some exploring. And their plan was to go looking and hunting for little salamanders and salamander eggs. They believe the children would have gone somewhere near Mount Weiyang. And that's because it's pretty much the only location in that area that had like a stream that would have had salamanders and salamander eggs. The boys left their village sometime around 9 o'clock in the morning, but by 1 p.m. they had not come home yet. And so the parents started to grow worried, but it was very difficult to get authorities involved that day because of the whole election going on. Sometime, I think it was like late that day or the next morning, when they were finally able to get a hold of police to actually report the 5 boys missing because they still had to come home. Police apparently just really didn't want to treat this as anything other than the boys just ran away on their own. They did not want to really treat this like an actual disappearance or that the boys had met with foul play. It was just, nah, they ran away, they'll come back. The families, however, were positive that they did not run away, that they are literally missing, and something has happened to them. So the families immediately started producing their own flyers. They started to pass out the flyers to everyone in the area. Eventually, and this goes on for years, by the way, because the boys are missing for a very long time. All 5 of the boys' fathers, all of them would quit their jobs, and they would start kind of basically touring the country themselves, passing out flyers. They would eventually all conduct searches of Mount Weiyang and the surrounding areas, but for years and years and years, they could not find anything. There was no trace of the boys whatsoever. The media didn't even start reporting about this case until like 5 or 6 days after they disappeared, and they incorrectly named them the Frog Boys. The boys were out there searching for salamander eggs. So I don't know why, but they called them the Frog Boys, but that's the name that stuck, and that's why they're called that. The South Korean president finally got involved and basically got several 100,000 people involved in searching the entire area. And again, they still couldn't find anything. In 1996, a criminal psychologist who was, I guess, Korean-American, he decided to make himself involved in the case and felt that he knew exactly what happened to the boys and that he knew likely where the boys were. He actually ended up blaming one of the boys' fathers, saying that father had killed all 5 boys and buried them underneath his house. This criminal psychologist had no evidence, had no proof, no witness testimonies or anything. He just basically pulled it out of thin air. But the police bought into it, and they actually ended up searching that house, and they ended up digging up underneath the entire structure of the home, and they dug and dug and dug, and they found nothing. The boys weren't there. Nothing was there to even indicate that they would have been there. There's like no clothing, no bones, nothing, no trace. So basically, this criminal psychologist was then just sort of just pushed out of existence from this whole thing, and was asked to never return. It would not be until September 26th, 2002, roughly 11 years after the boys disappeared, that they were finally found. Their bodies were found, partially buried. They had been all tied up together, and at this point, they were essentially just skeletal remains. They were found roughly a mile from the village they lived in, and they were found on Mount Wyong. When the bodies were found, police would not initially treat this as foul play. They initially said, well, the boys likely died of hypothermia, and that's why they were bundled up together. But the problem is they were tied together. They weren't just like bundled and huddled together. Someone tied them up. And also, it wasn't even a cold day when they disappeared. Not cold enough to die of hypothermia or even get hypothermia. And also, they would discover that the skulls, I think 3 of them, were caved in by blunt force trauma. They also found the clothing had been removed from the boys off of some of them, and some of their clothes were like tied up in in a knot, and they found unspent bullets inside the clothing items. Then they found an actual spent bullet in one of the boys' skulls. So they knew at that point that this was a murder, for sure. So then theories began to run rampant. Was like some sort of serial killer? Was this like the work of, a pedophile in the area? Was this like a bully that picked on them at school? Maybe the bully's families? One of the biggest theories, however, the one that seems to have the most weight, is that there was a nearby military base near where the boys were found. Now, on the day they disappeared, like I said, there was a big election going on, so most of the military that was there on the base had been out basically dealing with the election stuff. But there were several soldiers, I guess, left behind at the base, and they were on the shooting range, just firing their guns. The belief is that the boys got too close to the base, and possibly a soldier may have accidentally shot one of the boys in the head, because only one of them was found with an actual bullet in their head. And then, because the other 4 boys were there and witnessed what happened, and they didn't want to get caught, they then felt they had to kill the rest of them, and then, bury them. No one has ever been looked at or investigated, for that matter. No one in the military, no one who was on the base that day was questioned or anything along those lines. No one has ever been arrested, charged, prosecuted, nothing for this. It does sound like the police really just didn't want this to be what it was. They were kind of just trying to sweep it under the rug for some reason. They were murdered. These 5 boys were murdered, but no one knows why, and no one knows who did it, and it's to this day a mystery. They do know that the bullets that they found, the unspent bullets and the one found inside the boy's head, they were military-issued bullets. So there is significant weight to that theory that they were possibly involved accidentally. The military tried to say that, well, the bullets that were found near the boys, those were just there because from other occasions, like the firing range, probably some spent bullets just somehow got up there. The problem is that the bullets were found tied up in knots in the boys' clothing. They weren't just found just like near them. So that does really seem to be like the biggest possibility. But the chances of us ever actually knowing, probably slim to nil. To this very day, the mystery of the Frog Boys is still an unsolved mystery. And this is probably one of those that will never probably be solved. You know, we're not talking about, you know, they've got DNA to eventually test or anything like that, or fingerprints, or any kind of like hair samples, shoe impressions, like no physical evidence, no fingerprints on the bullets, that kind of thing. So yeah, this, unless someone comes out and just says, hey, it was me, I did it, yeah, this one probably will go unanswered until the end of time. But I do hope that I'm wrong. I do hope that somehow, some way, they do find out what happened to these boys, because the families deserve to know. This is 5 families affected by this. And it's carried with them from the day it happened until the day they all pass away themselves. And it's just not fair that they don't get to know. But that is it for this case today. Another short one. I will be back with you guys for another case, of course. Remember to please subscribe if you like true crime. I tell 4 true crime stories a week, 2 long-form ones and 2 short-form ones. And I also post compilation videos. Please subscribe to my TikTok, my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook. It's all listed in the link tree below. I sell merch. It's in the link tree below. We ship internationally. What else? What else is there? Who knows? Who really knows, right? And until the next case, True Crime Maroonies. I almost threw up. I almost threw up joy because I'm so happy to be here. What? It was the stupidest. I don't even.